Here's the story. One day, there was a heavy downpour of rain, and three men brought out their empty containers. One brought out a basin, another a barrel, while the last person brought out a small tank. The rain lasted for just 20 minutes, and when they all checked their empty containers, they were all filled to the brim. One more container was also filled to the brim, a reserve well, which was 10 times the size of the containers combined. So that 20 minutes of rain was so abundant that it could fill any container put under it. So whatever anyone got was limited by the size of their container. The moral of the story: the rain's capacity cannot be measured by the container it filled, but each man will judge the rain capacity by the container it filled. The same way with how we see God. God is so limitless that you cannot have enough of Him. That is why when God fills you up, you have no choice but to overflow. Still, how you see God determines how much of His abundance you receive. God is so liberal that He desires to give you all He has in store for you. But how big is your container to receive it? The size of your container can limit God and what you can receive from Him. What is this container I'm talking about? Your mind. Yes. Your mind is your life's container. Whatever your mind conceive, your life can receive. If your mind can conceive millions, you will surely become a millionaire. If your mind can conceive healing, your body will surely be healed. If your mind can conceive a better life, your life will become better. That is why the next thing after getting saved is to renew your mind. Do you remember? Because without renewing your mind, your faith will be limited and ineffective. For your faith to thrive, your mind must be able to conceive what you are believing in God for. That is why the key to answered prayers is to believe you have received them, then you will have them. Where do you think you can receive a thing first before having it? In your mind, of course. Now that you understand your mind's role as a container, how can you limit God? Number one, you limit God when you do not trust Him. Trust is an essential key to activate the power of God in your situation. So when you do not trust God, you block the access to His power working you. Number two, you limit God when you are afraid of the sacrifice He might demand from us. Most times we are afraid of what God will ask of us, so we do not take that step. It is when you act on God's instructions that you experience His mighty power working in and through us. Number three, you limit God when you depend on yourself. One of the things you do is try to solve problems by yourselves. And we are very limited as humans. Without God, you cannot do much. And if we depend on ourselves, God will not be involved in the affairs. Number four, you limit God when you allow your feelings to dictate your life. Have you ever felt so depressed that you think God is not around? It is only when we feel good that God is around us. When your feelings dictate your life, you do not acknowledge God in your situation, and He won't be able to direct you. Number five, you limit God when you sin. Sin robs you of approaching God with boldness, and if you cannot approach God, you cannot ask for help. Then God will not be able to intervene in your life affairs. Why should you take away the limit of God? God is infinite being and cannot be limited by time or space. Yet, being an infinite being, he cannot interfere in the affairs of earth without our involvement and request. We, on the other hand, are finite beings, meaning we have limitations. So for us to do more, we need to tap into the infinite nature of God. It is how much permission we give God that he will access. The capacity of our mind determines the measure of our permission we give God. God is not an interloper. God is not an interferer. God does not go where he is not invited. Is that not a surprise? Knowing that God that is all-knowing and everywhere, yet he does not enter your space. You see, God respects our decisions. And that is why in the first place he created you in his image and after his likeness. He takes decisions and agrees with himself before he does something. And that is how he created you. You have to accept it. But then God would never do anything outside his will. His job is to convince you and to make you understand that when you believe him, he will do what he says, because he does not lie. And his word is yea and amen. You need to understand that God's intention is to give you as much and as far as your eyes can see. He told Abraham, he said, as far as your eyes can see, if you cannot count the stars in the sky or the sand on the seashore, that is how much I have. You see, just like the analogy I just gave you, what you bring to God is what he feels for you. Ask God as far as you can. If man has the mouth to say, I will give you half of my kingdom, how do you think that God that is almighty, the one that owns the world in the palm of his hand, the one who has the rubies and the diamonds, the one who owns the cattle of the 1,000 hills, what makes you think he cannot do for you? You see, the storehouse of heaven is infinitesimal. You cannot count, but God is waiting for you to make a demand of it, because it is his joy that he wants to give to you as you ask of him. Do not limit God. Do not set boundaries for yourself as to how you get from God. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter what you will ever imagine, God is willing. If only you can understand that God cannot be limited. So, take off the limits by increasing your capacity and the capacity of your mind. Do not limit God.